Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. I never considered myself a suspicious man, but circumstances sometimes shape us in unexpected ways. On the recommendation of a colleague who had similarly hectic travel schedules, I installed a GPS tracker in my wife Jenna's car. The idea was simple: peace of mind while I was away on business. Jenna had always been supportive, often dismissing her own worries with a smile whenever I brought up my frequent trips. "As long as you come back to me," she'd say. This particular morning, as I prepared for a week-long conference across the country, Jenna kissed me goodbye, her perfume lingering in the air long after she had left for work. Settling into the taxi, I opened my laptop to check a few emails and casually logged into the GPS app. Her car was on the move, which was normal for this time of morning. Yet, instead of heading towards the marketing firm where she worked, the signal halted at a residential area, a place I couldn't recall ever visiting with her. My brow furrowed, but I shook off the first wave of unease, attributing it to a possible client meeting or perhaps a new project site. Over the next few days, I found myself checking the app more frequently. The pattern was undeniable. Every day, for hours at a time, her car was parked at the same location. Curiosity morphed into suspicion, and suspicion into concern. The house, a quaint Victorian nestled within a tree-lined street, seemed innocuous, but something about the regularity of her visit set off alarms in my head. Back home, I confronted Jenna under the guise of discussing her day. "Did you go anywhere interesting this week?" I ventured, trying to keep my tone light. She paused, a slight frown creasing her brow. "Just the usual. Work's been crazy, you know." Her response didn't match the GPS logs. My heart raced as I considered the implications. That night, I lay in bed, Jenna's steady breathing a stark contrast to the turmoil in my mind. The next morning, after she left, I decided to drive by the address. The truth hit me hard. Jenna's car was there, not just parked, but belonging in that driveway. Through the window, I saw her with someone else, a man whose laughter reached me even through the closed windows of my car. The sight of them, so at ease, shattered the remnants of any denial I harbored. Betrayal, that sharp, jagged pill, was mine to swallow. Over the next few weeks, my demeanor changed. I was cold, distant. Jenna sensed it, her attempts at warmth met with my icy indifference. The image of her with him haunted me, fueling a growing desire for retribution. She tried to discuss it, her confusion evident. "Is everything okay with us?" she asked one evening, her voice laced with worry. "Everything's fine," I lied, my words as hollow as the love I once felt. My plan took shape silently, meticulously. I would not confront her, that would be too kind. Instead, I would dismantle the life we had built together, piece by piece. It started with subtle disruptions, canceling our joint credit cards, withdrawing from our savings, all under the radar. I watched her life unravel from the shadows, a bitter satisfaction growing with every puzzled complaint she shared. "We need to talk," she finally said one day, her face pale, her eyes uncertain. "Something's wrong, I can feel it." "Yes, we do," I replied, my voice steady, my decision firm. "I want a divorce." The revelation would come later, in the following chapters, but the seeds were sown. I was no longer the man she married, but a stranger, bent on revenge. The intrigue of why and how would unfold, but at that moment, all that remained was the cold, hard path of vengeance. Jenna's face crumbled as the word divorce hung in the air between us like a toxic cloud. Confusion and fear flickered across her features, and she reached for my hand, which I withdrew instinctively. "Why are you doing this? What's happened to us?" Her voice quivered with desperation. I stared at her, my expression unreadable. "I think you know why, Jenna. We're just not working anymore." Her denial came quick and frantic. "No, we can fix whatever it is." We can go to counseling, take a vacation, anything. I shook my head slowly, the plan cementing itself within me. It's too late for that. I've made up my mind. As I watched her struggle with my cold declaration, a part of me ached to relent, to confess everything and confront her about her betrayal. But that moment of weakness passed swiftly, overpowered by the vivid memory of betrayal. No, this was the only way. In the following days, Jenna tried to salvage our marriage with tender gestures and long conversations late into the night. But I deflected her every attempt, withdrawing further into my shell of resentment and plotted retribution. Meanwhile, my actions outside our conversations were methodical and precise. I contacted our bank and instructed them to freeze our joint accounts for a review of suspicious activities, hinting at unauthorized transactions that didn't exist. Jenna's confusion grew as she faced declined cards and locked online banking profiles. "What's going on with our accounts?" she asked one evening, her voice tight with stress as she held up her declined credit card. "Just some security measures. It's being sorted out," I replied, feigning ignorance. The lie tasted bitter, but necessary. I also canceled upcoming appointments and reservations she had made, often impersonating her over the phone or sending emails from accounts I had access to. Her life, once so orderly and controlled, began to fray at the edges, her stability shaken by inexplicable disruptions. One night, I overheard her on the phone with a friend, her voice thick with tears. "I don't understand what's happening. It's like my whole life is falling apart." The sound of her distress did not bring satisfaction. Instead, it was a grim confirmation that the path I had chosen was irreversible. I needed her to feel lost, to feel the pain of betrayal as acutely as I had, even if it meant watching her break apart. Days turned into weeks, and our house became a battleground of silent tension and unspoken accusations. Jenna grew thinner, her eyes always shadowed with uncertainty and sadness. The final blow came when I informed her that I was moving out. "I've rented an apartment," I announced one morning, "my bag's already packed. I'll be out by tonight." Her reaction was one of defeat. "You're really doing this, aren't you?" she whispered, her voice hollow. "Yes, Jenna, I am." That evening, as I drove to my new apartment, the emptiness of the victory settled over me. The revenge I had sought did not bring peace, only a deep, pervasive sadness. Yet, there was no turning back. The plot I had set in motion still had more to reveal, and the true extent of Jenna's betrayal, along with my own, would unfold in the chapters to come. The dim light of my new apartment seemed to reflect the somber mood that had taken over my life. As I unpacked a box of books, the doorbell rang, a sound so unexpected that it made me pause. When I opened the door, Jenna stood there, her face streaked with tears but her eyes burning with a determination I hadn't seen in her for weeks. "We need to talk, now," she said, pushing past me into the living room. Her usual grace was replaced by a brisk, agitated energy. I closed the door, feeling a surge of apprehension. "What's so urgent, Jenna?" "I know what you've been doing," she began, her voice shaking. "The bank told me there was no investigation, no security measures. It was you, sabotaging everything." I remained silent, my resolve hardening. This was the moment I had been preparing for, yet it felt all wrong. "And I found this," Jenna continued, pulling a piece of paper from her pocket. It was a receipt for the GPS tracker I had installed in her car. "So, you've been spying on me." Her accusation hung heavily between us. "Yes, I have. And I know about him, Jenna. I know about the house you've been going to." My voice was colder than I intended, my words clipped with bitterness. Her face went pale, then flushed with anger. "You think you know everything, but you don't understand anything at all." Her voice rose, thick with emotion. "Yes, I've been going to that house. It belongs to my brother, Mark. He's been going through a divorce and needed support. I didn't tell you because you've always been so jealous of the time I spend with my family. The room seemed to spin as her words sunk in. Your brother. Why didn't you just tell me? Because you never listen. You just assume the worst. Jenna's voice broke, and she slumped onto the sofa, her energy spent. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of my misjudgments. Slowly, I sat beside her, my mind racing to process the truth. I'm sorry, Jenna. I should have trusted you. I let my fears and insecurities get the better of me. Jenna looked at me, her eyes weary. Do you understand what you've done? You've ruined us with your suspicions and your revenge. The gravity of my actions settled upon me with crushing weight. What can I do to make this right? I asked, although part of me feared it was too late. Nothing, she whispered. I don't think I can ever trust you again. I came here to tell you that I'm filing for divorce. For real, this time. I nodded, the finality of her decision sinking in. I'll sign whatever you need me to. You deserve to move on from this, from me. As Jenna stood to leave, a part of me wanted to reach out, to plead for forgiveness and a second chance. But I remained still, recognizing that some damages were too deep to repair. She paused at the door, her hand on the knob. I hope, one day, you find a way to trust again, she said softly, then walked out, closing the door gently behind her. Left alone in the silence of my apartment, I realized the full extent of my folly. The price of my mistrust was not just a broken marriage, but a broken spirit. As I sat back down, the plot of revenge that once seemed so necessary now appeared for what it truly was, a path to my own desolation. The days that followed Jenna's departure were draped in a heavy shroud of regret and revelation. Alone in my sparsely furnished apartment, I replayed our last conversation over and over, each time slicing anew through my remorse. But amid the waves of guilt, a sinister undercurrent of doubt lingered. Jenna's explanation hadn't fully assuaged my suspicions, something felt off. Compelled by a mix of unresolved suspicion and the raw edge of my bruised ego, I decided to seek out her brother, Mark. If I could confirm Jenna's story, perhaps I could find some peace. Or so I told myself. Driving to the address Jenna had unwittingly visited so often, my mind raced with possible scenarios. When I arrived, the house appeared deserted, curtains drawn tightly across all windows. After several knocks went unanswered, I tried the handle. Unlocked. Inside, the silence was oppressive, the air stale. I called out, Mark. It's me. Jenna's husband. Only my own echo greeted me. A quick search of the house led me to a study, where scattered papers and photographs covered the desk. Among them, a photo caught my eye. It was Jenna, smiling, but not with Mark as I expected. Instead, she was arm in arm with a man I recognized from my brief glimpse through that window weeks ago. The caption on the back read, "To my darling, may our future be as bright as our love." Anger surged through me, hot and blinding. Jenna had lied. There was no brotherly support, it was an affair, hidden beneath layers of deceit. Fueled by betrayal and an insatiable need for vengeance, I began my final, ruthless plan. If Jenna had chosen to deceive me, I would ensure the destruction of her newly fabricated world. First, I took the photograph and other incriminating evidence. Then, using the skills I had honed over my career, a career that had ironically begun in private security, I set about ensuring that both Jenna and her lover would lose everything. I leaked the man's personal and professional secrets to his business partners and online, watching from the shadows as his life began to crumble under the weight of scandal and mistrust. Next, I turned my focus back to Jenna. I sent anonymous tips to her firm about alleged misconduct and embezzlement, planting enough doubt to spark an internal investigation. Her career, once a source of her pride and independence, teetered on the brink. The final act of my revenge came one cold evening. As I watched from across the street, Jenna and her lover, now clearly destitute and desperate, confronted each other. Their heated argument spilled out onto the street, voices cracking with anger and despair. "You ruined us." Jenna screamed at him, unaware of my presence, of my role in their downfall. "It wasn't me. It's your husband, he's behind this, I know it," the man retorted, his face a mask of betrayal and fear. I stepped forward from the shadows, my approach silent. "You're both right," I declared as they turned towards me, shock etched across their faces. "What do you want from us?" Jenna cried, tears streaming down her face. "Justice," I said simply, though the word tasted like ash in my mouth. "You betrayed me, Jenna. And you," I turned to the man, "you helped her do it." There was no grand confrontation, no further accusations. They already knew the depth of my wrath. I left them there, broken and defeated, the ruins of their lives a stark testament to the cost of betrayal. As I walked away, the hollow victory did nothing to fill the void within me. Revenge had consumed me, leaving behind nothing but a shell of the man I once was. Jenna and I, bound forever by our mutual destruction, would never see each other again. My heart, once capable of deep love, now knew only the bitter taste of vengeance.